Hello, everybody. Lynn Del Mastro Thompson with Heartfire Healing here. And today's topic is all about the experience of wanting to help someone that you love or care about who is struggling with their health. So this isn't about the actual person who is dealing with their health. This is for you, especially if you are struggling with how do you help someone who is going through a health crisis, who's dealing with a diagnosis, who's facing a health challenge. And this video is inspired by a question I get sometimes from family members, friends, concerned people who have someone in their life who is dealing with a health issue and struggling and wanting to know, what do they do? How can they help this person? I have ideas, I have resources, but they're not open. And this is definitely a big topic, probably one we can talk about more times than this, but today I want to start talking about this because it's something actually that I struggle with in my own life a bit. So my husband deals with some chronic health issues, and we both have slightly different perspectives about kind of the place of alternative health and healing. I am obviously, through what I do, a much bigger proponent and advocate of that, and he is a little bit more in the school of following the Western system, and he's open to some things, but he's not always as open to other things. I am kind of the try everything person. I'm relentless and I will keep trying until I find the thing that can help. And that isn't always his approach. And so I want to share kind of that this is a struggle that I know personally as well, and it's not easy to have somebody that you love and care about dealing with a health issue and you feel like you have resources or ideas and suggestions, and that person may not always be open. So let's talk today a little bit about what do you do in that situation and how can you help someone who you care about who is going through something. So the first thing that happens when we kind of come from that place is we're coming from a place that we really care, right? We really want to help that person, but sometimes in that desire to help and that strong passion to help them and to want them to feel better, we struggle because they may be resistant. They may have different ideas about what they need and what they want. They may have different belief systems, which sometimes I feel like I come up against. And we have to remember, the first part is actually all about us, is that we have to remember that this is also their process. This is something that they are going through and that we can't make the choices for them. And it can be really frustrating. And if you're frustrated in this situation and you wish you could just kind of whack someone upside the head and kind of get them to follow your suggestions, you're not alone in that. I feel that way sometimes, and I know many other people feel that way. But at the same time, there's a need to really understand that this is their journey and this is their experience. And this is something I remind myself of, I think, some days on a daily basis, that it's, in the case of the story with my husband, it's his journey, it's not mine. I've had my own journey with being sick and with healing, and that was my journey, and I made my choices. But there's also the need to come from the place of respecting and honoring that somebody else is in their own process and in their own way of finding their way through it. And they may not always agree with everything that you suggest. They may not always be open to everything you suggest. So just first acknowledging that for yourself, that this is their process and you can love and support them and you can make suggestions. I think one of the ways that can be helpful is just to say, would you be open to me making a suggestion? So you're getting permission, because we often get in that space of wanting to just jump in and say to somebody, here, I read this article about this thing, or I tried this thing, or I have a friend who, had a similar problem and, she did this particular modality, or she tried this diet approach, and look at all the things, and we get excited, but we haven't even taken a chance to ask them if they want to hear that. And so there's a need to kind of, when we're not the one going through it, respectfully kind of ask for a little bit of permission of, would you like to hear something that I found out about? And then when you share that, of course, it's kind of sharing from a place of non-attachment to them choosing whatever it is that you're suggesting. Like, okay, I've presented the option, and I'm willing to help them learn more about it if they want. And then there's also the need to just kind of let that go and say, this is their choice ultimately. And reminding yourself, if they don't say yes now in this moment, that doesn't mean never, right? Because sometimes it's like we say no to things. I remember saying no to things in my own healing journey that I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to go to therapy. No, I don't want this. And later I realized that that was what I needed. So, remind yourself in the no, it may just be a not yet, and have that hope. So another challenge that we really face is, as someone who cares about our loved one and we want to help them, is that we can see that healing possibility for themselves, for them, right? Because we've heard stories and we've seen things, or maybe, you've gone through something and you've healed. And so you're in that space of like, I believe that they can heal and that this thing can help them. But if they are not in that space of being ready for that yet, it's their journey, it's their process, and you can still hold that space for them. You can still visualize them healed, or visualize them opening up to that possibility, because that's your own experience of it, right? And that's you from a non-attached way of trying to force something. It's like you can envision them being open to the suggestions, being open to what could help them heal, but you're not, again, trying to come in and force something that is not really their choice. Ultimately, all of this sometimes feels like we want to come in and we want to rescue people. And again, I can feel just as guilty of this as anybody else. Like, I want to fix things sometimes. I want to make them better. Knowing what I know and the work that I do, it's like I have so many connections and resources and tools, and it's like, I want to help. I want to make things better. Just let me help you. But again, coming back to that place of, it's not your choice, it's not your journey. And when we try to force something on someone who's not open to it, who's not ready for it, who doesn't want to receive it, what are you doing? You're just creating more resistance. You're probably kind of creating some friction in your relationship with that person, because they're saying no and you're not listening to the no. So it's just kind of a process of realizing that this is their journey and this is their experience and their process. And I think that's kind of one of the central messages here today is, my journey is different than my husband's journey, and my journey is different than my client's journey. Like, not every person heals in the same way, and not every person makes that journey and those choices in the same process and pace. And so I think initially for me, I was expecting him to approach his challenges the exact same way that I was approaching mine, which once I kind of hit that place of, I don't want this anymore, like, I believe there has to be something that can help me, I just started trying everything and anything. And that is not who he is. That's not his nature. He's very methodical, and he likes to choose one thing and see how it works and kind of go, assess that, because he says, well, I don't know if I'm trying two things, like, which one is working. And I'm like, I don't really care as long as something's working. But that's a difference, right? Respecting that each person has their own process and their own way of going through what is ultimately a huge journey to find health and healing. Lastly, remembering that, you don't know exactly what they're going through. Like, you're not in their body. Even if you've been sick, which is what I have to remind myself of, like, I don't know what it feels like on a daily basis to deal with what he deals with. He doesn't know what I dealt with, right? So each person's experience, their lived experience, is different. And if you've not really been somebody who's dealt with chronic illness, you may know what it's like to have the average things that people get on, a cold and stomach upsets and things like that. And it's very, very different for somebody who's going through something where they're dealing with a chronic health condition. And so really trying to respect that and trying to understand, what is their lived experience like? What do they experience on a daily basis? Being curious to that. You know, sometimes just trying to check in with them, like, how are you doing today? Like, what's going on for you? Trying to just understand, come from a place of, I just want to understand what's going on with you. You know, can you share a little bit more with me? Can you tell me, you know, what you need? Because again, we're coming again from this place of wanting to help someone, and we can see the possibilities and we can see all the options that we've encountered that might help them. But we also need to remember what they're dealing with on a daily basis. And when you're kind of ankle deep in the muck of all of this and you're exhausted and you feel crappy and you know, your body hurts and just everything is wrong, I do remember from my own experience, it was hard initially to have that hope. It was hard to climb out of that pit of despair and to take a step towards healing. And so honoring the person that you're trying to help, that they may be really stuck in that place. They may be afraid to try something because they're afraid it won't help. They may be just really depressed. And some people, you know, their belief systems are different. I was having a conversation with someone on Saturday asking about, you know, how to help her daughter, who is very much more wanting to stay with kind of the Western approach of things, even though they don't know what's going on with her health. And, you know, it's very hard. And I've seen this time and time again when somebody sends me a loved one to see me as a practitioner and that person hasn't really bought in. They're going because they're trying to appease their spouse or their parent because the parent kind of pushed them to come see me. The results ultimately that I've gotten for those people have been less because they're resistant, they're not ready. So I think coming from a place of how can you encourage them to take small steps to open up, and how can you encourage them to learn about different options without forcing it down their throat, you know, like kind of, would you be open to just me sharing this story that I heard of someone I know, you know, but if they say no, then you have to ultimately back off and say, you know, I can't force this down anyone's throat. They have to choose this for themselves. So if we're trying to force it down their throat and we're trying to swoop in and like help and rescue them, ultimately it's disempowering for the other person. It puts them in the place of needing to be rescued. And that's most of the time, it's not our intention. We're not wanting that person to feel like they're a victim or that we think that they need saving, but we're sending that message in some ways through our actions and through how we're trying to help. So I hope this was helpful. If this raises some more questions about this particular topic, it's something I'm kind of exploring talking more about because I have a unique perspective of being somebody who's gone through a journey with chronic illness, but also having a loved one who's going through his own journey. And I think it's a very challenging thing. It's a challenging thing to be the person who's sick. And it's a challenging thing to be the person who is watching someone you care about deeply struggle and to have ideas and suggestions and possible solutions for that person, but they can't receive them at this time. So again, I'm open to more questions on this topic because I would love to do a few more videos based on kind of you watching this and what feedback and questions you might have after listening to this particular piece. So thank you for taking the time to watch. If it feels like there's somebody who might need this message in your life, somebody who else who is struggling with a loved one, dealing with a health challenge, and they can't seem to help them, this would be another great resource to share with them. So please feel free to share. All right, I am going to sign off for now. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will talk to you all soon.